You made it. Yeah, BEA, beautiful souls. That's right. We got time for another tier list for For Honor. A lot of big changes have happened, especially since Reflex Guard has been removed, and a ton of good changes overall for the state of the game. I'll be going over each character and, essentially going over the strengths and weaknesses of it. I won't be going too in depth like the last video because I don't want it to be too long. I want to try to keep it under an hour at least. But this time I'll be doing a little bit different. I'll be going Knights, Vikings, Samurai, Woolen, and then the Afeera character, the Outlanders factions. And so I think it'll be a little bit more interesting and engaging for you guys so you guys don't have to watch who's going to be the best S tier character. And remember, this is a tier list for the matchmaking lobbies. So many shenanigans can happen, so it's best to be prepared and expect the unexpected with some strong characters. Let me know what characters you feel stand out currently in this meta and if you've been doing well with that hero. First off, let's talk about the perks. You want to be running Devour, Endurance, and Headhunter, so you get a little bit more HP, more stamina, and more executions, more health after an executions. Some people run early Reaper because you do get a little bit more bonus damage after doing a running attack or something like that, so if you save it. For defensive perks, you always want to go for Bastion, Vengeful Barrier, and Last Stand. You can also run Bulk Up as well, makes you a lot more tankier, but I prefer Last Stand so you can use it throughout the entire game. For assistive, you want to run Radiant Rebound so you can get to points faster and clear mid lane, Remedy, Feline Agility, or you can be running Rapid Refresh as well. You want to be running Rapid Refresh as much as you can, especially for characters like Nobushi, Medjay. Get your skills back really quickly after getting a kill. And of course, remember, the best characters in this game are the ones that have tools for every single situation, whether we're talking about external unblockables, undodgeable pressure, chain pressure as well, wide hitboxes for their lights and heavies, easy gank setups, full blocks, hyper armor, easy peasy, dodge cancel recoveries including CV stance and hidden stance, and 400 ms unreactable light attacks, great dodge attacks, enhanced light attacks, roll catcher is very important, and clutch potential such as Way of the Shark, wall splat, ledges, and feats. All of those things will determine if a character is going to be up in the tier list and will require the least amount of brain power, because the characters that have the least amount of skills that you can utilize in matchmaking, especially with tons of nonsense happening, you're gonna have to work your ass off to get even a little bit of effort that maybe Afeera would, just by moving her little pinky. So let's just get down and dirty into it. The first character we're going to talk about is Warden. Warden has a lot of issues in this meta. He's had a lot of issues overall, especially in 4v4. Now we want to be talking about 4v4. Remember that, boys. 4v4 is the game mode that Ubisoft balances around, and we're going to put Warden right around C tier. He is not that great. He's gotten a few buffs overall, but with the unblockables being really helpful for chain pressures and being able to go into his 50-50 bash, which is really nice. I kid you not, it's really nice, but in team fights, it's just not that helpful if he's a lot of revenge. His hitboxes on his heavies are pretty good. Not really that great ganks. No full blocks, no hyper armor, no dodge cancel recoveries, no fast lights, all 500 ms, and his crushing counters on his top one is really situational and you barely ever see it. He does have a nice roll catcher, but unfortunately no clutch potentials. The only thing he's got going for him is a really good hitbox for his finisher heavies and neutral heavies, but other than that, he kind of suffers in team fights tremendously. You need a really good team if you're going to survive with him, and I implore you to not pick him if you don't have good reactions and good reads, because he requires you to have good reads and reactions to bait out your opponents and mind game them. His zone attack did get buffed, and you can use it to help your teammates in peel, but essentially you can't really do much after that and hope to God that your teammate will confirm your unblockable heavies, but other than that, you got nothing going on. Warden has barely any stalling or anti-ganking because he doesn't have any defensive capabilities whatsoever. Feats you should definitely be running is body count. Come at me if you got a big PP, but Inspire is great. Second Wind, you don't really have much choice, and of course you can run Stalwart Banner, which is probably your best bet to negate Fire Flash, which is so prevalent in the meta. I usually run Catapult just to mess around, and it's a pretty hilarious feat. Next character we have is Conqueror, and I'm gonna put Conqueror around B tier. Now, I would say that he's not like a terrible character, it's just that Conqueror has a lot of issues with this kit. Yeah, he's got decent unblockable pressure with his unblockable heavies and team fights, decent hitboxes. He doesn't really have any ganks, unfortunately, so no ganks. A decent full block that can hit all around him with a 360. Be careful though, because it does hit walls a lot, so you won't get guaranteed damage. no hyper armor, and no dodge cancel recoveries, normal 500 MS light attacks, but his dodge bashes can be pretty good for option selects, but be careful because you will get guard broken out if they manage to dodge your side dodge bash. The neat thing is that his forward bash is really fast, 100 to 500 MS, and his same side light is still about 900 MS, so it's actually ridiculous. He feels like he has a really outdated kit, and it just doesn't really fit in this meta. I think he's still a solid character. He does have like a running bash that can set up pins with maybe Jormungandr, but other than that, he doesn't got the infinite zone anymore, rip. And unfortunately, the only reason he is sort of viable in Dominion is because of his tier 2 shield basher, which deals an additional damage, so every heavy parry, he gets about 18 damage total. You either run speedy revive or body count. Punch through is practically useless, so they pretty much forgot about this character when they reworked him for the 3rd time, and unfortunately in the 3rd testing grounds they didn't even decide to remove this feat or change it with something else, so you can tell that the devs didn't really put too much effort on the last testing grounds for him. Pugno Mortis is probably your best bet, and then I like to run Uninterruptible, which is pretty good, lasts for 30 seconds, and makes you, a pretty strong tank if I say so myself. You can either run Regenerate as well and Catapult just for funsies. Conqueror's stalling is pretty decent, but with the amount of undodgeables in this game, I feel like he's gotten severely nerfed in that aspect. I think he can still be pretty good for stalling because he can cancel his recoveries into a full block, which is pretty awesome. But I think he's still a good character, so don't get me wrong, guys. Peacekeeper is next on the line, and she is D tier. She's absolutely one of the worst characters to play in Dominion, and nobody can ever tell me otherwise. Because one, let's just go over it real quick. She's just bad. She has 0 hitboxes and no external unblockable or undodgeable pressure at all. Bad hitboxes, not that great ganks. You need a really good team if you're going to set up ganks with her, so they're very hard to perform. No full blocks, no hyper armor. Her dodge cancel recoveries are really half-assed compared to Orochi's or Pirates, and they really need to adjust that in the future. She does have pretty good 400 MS unreactable chain lights, but you only get one of those, and you only get one of those for the heavy softening and top light, but then of course just block top. The dodge attacks are pretty solid. Her forward one is really good for peeling for your teammates. The nice thing is that if you do get a bleed, the enhanced lights do start, so you can actually get some serious pressure, but in team fights you want to be killing as fast as possible, and that's not Peacekeeper's strong suit. She just really suffers in this meta with hyper armor and huge hitboxes. Even though reflex guard is removed and you have static guard, she just doesn't contribute that much. You have to play really reactively and methodically if you want to do well with her, and of course you need a good team because you will not be able to anti-gank with this character. For Peacekeeper, I would probably be running Bounty Hunter or Stealth to get your health back and be hidden from projectiles. Thick Skin, I mean, you can run Fiat just to troll, but it's just a terrible feat, so don't use that. Crossbow to finish off enemies, or Sharpened Blade, which deals much more damage with bleed damage, and Fear itself is always your go-to, but if you want to be a troll, Last Laugh is the way. Next up, we have Lawbringer. Now, Lawbringer did get quite a few changes with his rework. If you guys didn't know, he does have the ability to continue his unblockable heavies. His top unblockable heavy is softenable now, which is really nice. His external and unblockable pressure is immaculate. It's really insane and incredibly good for team fights, and of course they gave him hyper armor on his chain heavies, which is great for team fights. Good hitboxes, really good ganks as well. No full blocks, but the hyper armor will help him out tremendously. Any character with hyper armor is going to succeed and do really well in team fights. He does have a forward dodge bash and a side dodge bash, which is okay for an opener. The enhanced lights can help you out and going into your mix-up, but that's if they don't parry it. But in team fights, you're going to be target swapping that heavy attack anyways, and most people will try to dodge that or just take the chip damage. But unfortunately, guys, he did not get a roll catcher, and that's what he really needed in this game. Without the roll catcher, all he can really do is stall and, just try to fight and survive on the team fight. His zone attack is really nice though, because they buffed the stamina and they made it so that you continue with a light attack or heavy attack and go into your chain unblockable finisher, which is fantastic. I love that change. It's so good for team fights and a great quality of life change for my boy Lawbringer. Unfortunately, they did nerf his impale, so you can't impale after heavy attack, and that ruins his heavy parry punishes. But of course, after a light riposte, or a heavy attack, you can do a light riposte and go into your unblockable mix-up afterwards. So, that kind of evens everything out on giving him more damage potentially and allowing the other player to actually throw heavies. But overall, Lawbringer, he just kind of feels the same, with a few things that got nerfed about him and a few adjustments that made him stronger in chain pressure. I think overall it makes him a very strong character and quite formidable in the right hands. and with the hyper armor addition to his kit and the great hitboxes on his unblockable heavies, he is kind of a menace. And with long arm being a pretty good ganking tool, and impale good for ledging, is just, I think he's practically insane, but I find him very boring to play, but that's just my opinion. The feats that I would personally run with Lawbringer is Harsh Judgment. Now this is really good. It reduces stamina for your opponent, so that means they can't really be that aggressive. Righteous Deflect is something I personally go for. Now you get 50% damage reduction for 5 seconds after a parry. So in defensive situations where you're stalling, if you manage to get a parry, you basically have Juggernaut already. So Juggernaut does it for 10 seconds and you get 50% damage reduction. But if you get Righteous Deflection, you can get this like ever so often. The cooldown is only 10 seconds while Jugs is about 90 seconds. Definitely want to be running Pugno or Second Wind. Pugno for Bomb Mortis and Ignus Ember for more bombs. Now Centurion, I'm going to put him around A tier. Now this character, he excels in one area very well in duels. He's fantastic, very strong character, but in team fights, he's really bad. In ganks, he's incredibly good. His ganks are so good. So be sure to watch out for that. Centurion is great in ganks, but he's not that good in team fights. So don't try to put him in a team fight situation because you will get your head smacked around. His external heavy attacks, unblockables, they're not really good. That's why you don't want him using in team fights. His ganks are really easy to perform. No full blocks and no hyper armor, except for his forward heavy one, which you can do for massive trades. And it's a decent roll catcher. The lights are all 5 RMS, so he has nothing really that, excels when it comes to light spam, but with the addition of huge clutch potentials on heavy parries, he is a monster in 1v1. So every time you get a parry, you can go for a knee into punch into a light attack. And with Haymaker, which makes him incredibly strong and gives him high damages while also dealing stamina damage, it makes him incredibly annoying if you actually do get parried by him. He's one of the characters that has the highest damage wall punishes in the entire game. He does have a forward bash and a dodge attack, which is nice, but the best trait about this character is his charged punch that does have hyper armor towards the end, and you can use it to pin people and get massive amounts of damage with Eagle's Talon. This can be confirmed quite easily with a light attack, and you will decimate the person who decided that they wanted to be Ferrum. For Centurion, I would run Body Count, Haymaker, Pugio, which is basically unreactable. It's so fast, 300 MS reaction time. Nobody's gonna be able to dodge that on reaction. Personally, I like to run Phalanx because it helps your teammates all around, and you don't have to be near them when you use it. I want to put Centurion up here because I think his ganks make him so powerful that he belongs up there, even though his team fights are pretty ass cheeks. Now Gladiator, I'm gonna put him up in A tier. He has the same issues as Centurion, where his ganks are insane and his 1v1s are really good too. The problem is that For Honor is in a team fight meta right now, so hyper armor will always beat out Gladiator even though your reflex guard is gone. The funny thing is that Gladiator's hitboxes for his heavies have pretty good forward momentum and decent range, which is pretty insane. His toe step allows for easy ganks and easy separation to reset the fight to neutral and has frame advantage. His forward bash is 305 RMS, but it doesn't guarantee any damage unless you have Haymaker, which is your tier 2. The forward light attack is a decent roll catcher if I say so myself. No hyper armor and no dodge cancel recoveries on anything, which makes him a little bit weaker in that regard, but I think he has his own strengths. As you can see here, he does have a 433 MS chain top light attack, but the side ones are going to be just 500 MS, so keep that in mind. So block top when he does the light attacks and prepare to use his toe stab, which is 500 MS in chain. On neutral, it's only 600 MS. His zone attack is also fantastic, really hard to punish with the dodge attack, and you can also feint it. It's 600 MS, but will deal multiple amounts of damage with Haymaker. And then of course we have his skewer, which is ridiculously insane with tons of damage overall. The skewer does a lot of damage, and with the deflex added to that, I feel like he is a monster if you are good at the character. It does 35 bleed damage total with an addition of 2 damage on the first prick. So that's 37 damage total. Actually insane for the character. Really overtuned in my opinion, and it probably might get nerfed in the future. You can also throw people after a skewer, so it makes him really good for ledging, and he's just a really scary character if you always just try to guard break him, because he can just dodge bash you and make it so that your guard break bounces off of him. He has a really good side dodge bash as well, really good for trying to get away from certain mix-ups. Feats that I would be running is Bounty Hunter, but Deadly can be very helpful when you try to finish someone off with a chain heavy in a target swap situation. Normally you don't really want to be in team fights, but you can't really control every single little thing that happens in the game, and this will make your chain heavy finishers deal a shinto ton of damage. Haymaker is your go-to, and I always run Neptune's Wrath. Bullet is okay, but you want to finish off someone really quickly and not have them set up for, a light into skewer mix-up, which is pretty cool. You can get that skewer off It deals a lot of damage, but overall, I think I'd rather take Neptune's Wrath over anything. Fear itself is the one you want to be running. Now, he's been reigning supreme in matchmaking. I've seen a lot of people use Gladiator now because of the aesthetics and with the removal of reflex guard, so he's a very strong pick, so it's best that you try to learn how to fight against him. Next up, we have my boy, my girl, Black Prior. Now, Black Prior, I'm going to put her S tier because Black Prior has, you know, he's kind of like the FU Ubisoft, right? Or FU everybody else on the enemy team. You know, screw red team, blue team for the win. So essentially, he can just option select everything with his flip, and you have to respect that. He's a great forward bash kid openers, and his externals with his unblockable bulwark heavy attack, which is great horizontal cleave, and undodgeable chain pressure with a chain bash as well. Solid mix-up overall, great hitboxes, and really good ganks. The full block can recovery cancel on practically any move, and you can be safe on using bulwark or just going into your unblockable heavy attack. Forward bash is a great roll catcher, and of course he does have dodge attacks that continue into a full block or a chain bash mix-up. Overall, I think this character is incredibly hard to beat once you know a few things and few tricks about this hero. He's really good for matchmaking. He's kind of your solo carry character if you don't really have a team you can play with, because you can just say, you know, FU to your mix-ups or FU to your external heavy attacks. And once they start figuring out that you can basically just flip everything, they have to go for a read and guard break you within that time period. And, you know, that's where Black Prior kind of excels because he stops people from attacking so much. Usually Medjays and Raiders and Jiang Juns will constantly just be throwing attacks willy-nilly, especially Gryphons too for some reason. They just love throwing that finisher chain heavy externally, and I just flip them for days. Black Prior does also have crushing counters on his light attack, so you can use that externally and make it so that you're pretty safe on certain mix-ups. And unfortunately, he still has that stamina drain on his bash, so you can use that and go into a frame advantage unblockable heavy attack after the light. You should be running Sinister Shield, Healing Ward, and some people have been running Doom Banner, which is a pretty good feat, really good feat actually just for team fights, but I feel like that's only if you play well with your team overall. I'd rather have Healing Ward so I can kind of anti-gank and heal my health ever so slightly and just taunt my enemy, you know, just taunt them, make them lose. I want to see the hope fade from their eyes as I just gain HP slowly while my teammate fights them. It's just the most ridiculous thing ever. And of course, everybody's been running Oathbreaker, and you have to fight cancer with cancer. Black Prior is the answer to the cancer, so use Oathbreaker, and hopefully this feat gets deleted or reworked in the future, but this removes all your shields, so it's GG's. Umbral Shielder all the way. Next up, we have Warmonger. She's gonna be up in the A+ tier. She's got a lot going for her. I think she's like overall one of the most solid knight characters in the game. Great hitboxes with her normal heavies and her finishers heavies. They're insane. She has a forward undodgeable heavy, which is, I think that's one of the best parts about her kit overall, to catch dodge rollers and people who have dodge cancel recoveries. Really great for catching them since they like to spam that so much. Her ganks are not too bad either, and one of the most clutch things about this character is that one, yes, she does have enhanced lights, but after every heavy parry or any parry in general, she can go for an impale just like old Lawbringer used to. So if she gets the narrow wall and wall splat, she does a bunch of bleed damage, and this bleed damage does about 30 damage total. So it's your max punish on light parry if there's a wall nearby, and there's a wall nearby after a heavy attack. We also can't forget about her unblockable heavy attack that has decent iframes and helps you reposition around the fight to external your unblockable heavies. With hyper armor on her finisher heavies, she's a great trader in team fights when you target swap those. If you delay those heavy attacks, a lot of people are gonna mess their parries up, and you can mix those in with light attacks and finisher heavy. So it's really good. She's really strong overall, and I think she's a great starter character for a lot of players. And let's not forget about her chain bashes, which is the chargeable one, pretty much unreactable and has hyper armor there, and deals bleed damage at first and then does normal base damage, which is pretty cool. I like the bleed mechanic. She feels really different and unique in that aspect. For the feats to be running, always be running Corruption Blade, Elixir of Corruption, Power of Corruption, and Corruption Blast. You can run Arrow Strike if you are in a very open map, but you know, you can just kind of go safe and just pick the first basic feats. Now I'm going to put Gryphon up in the A tiers. Now Gryphon, I feel like in matchmaking, he's fairly easy to use. A lot of good damage values overall with hyper armor, undodgeables, and a forward enhanced light attack. So the externals on his finisher heavies are insane. They're really good. Heavy attack that is Jinjoni Sho. That is basically a really good roll catcher, but it's fairly slow and it's unfeintable. He does have a really good dodge attack that can pretty much traverse you across time when you target swap that. Really good when it comes to the animations because it's hard to tell if it's actually targeting you. But I'd say if you want to pick a character that has pretty good utility, I don't think he's necessarily a bad character, but he's definitely not one of the worst characters at all. He has a kit, his kit is there, but it just needs to be refined a little bit. What's really nice about Gryphon is that his wall splat damage is fairly high, so if you actually manage to get a wall splat, you can go for your top heavy finisher that deals a lot of freaking damage. A feats that I would run for him is probably Stern Stare or fast recovery, depends on your playstyle. You can also run speedy revive as well, because he is sort of a paladin-like character. Dragonite's Mist to heal enemies, your teammates around them, and Dragonite Bolt, which is really helpful. And then some people like to run Dragonite Cleanser, which deals a lot of damage, but Champion's Aura, I think, is just the go-to, in my honest opinion, which heals all around you. And I think Champion's Aura is just the best feat to be using because it heals bleed and fire. So that's all for the Knights faction, and let's mosey on over to the Vikings. Now for Raider, Raider is a classic. Now this individual, I'm gonna put him up in the A tiers. Great mix-ups, you know, I think he excels way more in team fights because of his hyper armor and his great hitboxes on his heavies. Great hitboxes, I cannot stress that enough, especially with the zone attack. Really scary, does a lot of damage, and can go into his enhanced zones. It's really nice that he also has triple chain heavies, so it can be really helpful for ganks and setting people up with lots of damage. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any bashes whatsoever, so he remains more of a light and heavy mix-up type of character. So play him methodically and you'll get a lot of good results, but you can also kind of no-brain him too, especially in team fights. Just throw your heavies and get a lot of profit. His dodge attack is really good too, because he can delay it by quite a bit, and I think his best quality is his ability to reposition so well, because his dodges have a lot of range. You can kind of just run away from your enemy by target swapping and dodging away from someone that's trying to target you. But unfortunately, he doesn't really have a roll catcher, and I think that's kind of where he falls prey to 1v1 situations. Yeah, he does have a really fast 400 ms soft feint storming tab, which is nice, but unfortunately that's kind of all he really has. The clutch potential that Raider does have though is that he has Stampede Charge, and anytime he actually does get a guard break, he can get a ledge or just go ahead and charge the person that he has on his back and throw him off a ledge or throw him on the ground to guarantee a heavy attack or a zone attack. A zone attack will stagger them for longer, so it's better for ganking situations, but you can also do a lot more mix-ups overall if you use a normal heavy attack, because it doesn't use as much stamina. I think Stampede Charge is what separates him from a lot of lower tier characters. Even though he doesn't have that much going for his kit specifically, it's really simple, effective with hyper armor and just heavies, but with Stampede Charge you can just unlock and essentially get a cheese kill or a nice gank opportunity. For Raider, I like to run Rush so I can get to the point faster, and you can also run Tireless if you want to use more attacks. Mark for Death is great, but I personally would probably run Inspire so you can deal more damage overall. Fury and Fire Flash is probably going to be your best bet, especially as a team winning feat. But the cool thing is that I like to run Battlecry too, because this will push all of the minion enemies away and then make them run. You also give your allies 25% damage for 20 seconds, so it's not too shabby. I like to run this so I don't have to be such a meta slave with Fury and Fire Flash, because obviously that's going to delete everybody, but Battlecry is just really cool to use. Alright, so Warlord is next up on the chopping block, and honestly, I think I'm going to put Warlord in A+ tier. This character just has such a good utility overall, and I think he just excels at what he does very simply. His externals on his zone attack, which is undodgeable, is really helpful, and of course he has hyper armor on all of his heavy attacks. His ganks are pretty good too. He also has a forward bash that is 100 to 500 ms startup, so it's really fast, and most people won't be able to dodge this. Combine this with, you know, your bread and butter on light attacks that are enhanced, and delaying your finisher heavies or just using neutral heavies in general. This will take your opponent's health away a lot, and they won't even notice it, especially for the chip damage. You don't want to be trying to trading with this guy. You want to respect his heavies and his light attacks. He does have a really nice forward heavy too that has hyper armor. You kind of use it to like option select or just ignore certain mix-ups on team fights or 1v1 situations. Let's not forget that he has correction counters for his light attacks, which makes him quite a formidable character to gank. This character is a stalling hero, and he will do exceptionally well if you can play methodically and kind of outread your opponents that don't really know how to gank that well. And the last thing is Crashing Charge. This is your clutch potential. Your ledging capabilities just skyrocket by billing. His guard break is also one of the best guard breaks in the entire game. You throw them super far. His full block is also really nice for defensive measures as well when it comes to, you know, ganking or just 1v1 potential. It's really hard to try to beat him because you have to read that he's going to go into full block. You also light attack out of it, dodge out of it, use an undodgeable heavy attack out of it. A lot of pressure with this character. Feats that I personally run would be Rush. Deadly is really nice too for, you know, finisher heavy trades. It can be helpful, but I think Rush is probably going to be your best bet because he's a very slow character. Juggernaut, obviously, Fury, and Fire Flask all the way. Berserker is next up on the chopping block, and he's going to be up in the A+ tiers. This character has always been a pretty formidable hero, especially in the meta overall. He's got hyper armor, a lot of good utility, a good hitbox too, especially with his dodge attack. But of course, let's just go over it real quick. Hyper armor on pretty much everything, 400 MS, chain light attacks, 3 chain heavy attacks, which can be easily set up for nice ganks, chain heavy unblockable finishers with hyper armor on the left and the top one, forward light and a forward heavy to roll catch people. And I think this forward heavy is the best forward heavy in the entire game because it will reach you no matter how far you go. If you think you're safe, you're not. His dodge attacks are great with undodgeable properties and the ability to basically dodge cancel out of everything. He's absolutely a monster. And the reason why he's so powerful right now is they've been giving him small incremental buffs, 10 more HP, and now that reflex guard is removed, he's much more consistent in blocking and actually holding his ground in team fights and anti-ganking and things like that. So consistency is very important. And what I would run with him is Bounty Hunter, Doom Banner, Throwing Axe. You can run Fury and Fire Flask as well, and of course just use Fear itself. Next up we have Valkyrie. She's also going to be in the A+ tier. This character is scary, especially if you know how to play her right. The full block, essentially exudes so much pressure. There's a lot of things you have to make a read on, and it's basically unreactable because there's 400 MS that comes out of it. The startup is pretty slow, but there's a lot of things that you can do within it. She can feint it, she can dodge, and she can just let it fly. She's really good for ganking purposes. You got great hitboxes on all her heavies. Amazing ganks to utilize in matchmaking are very easy to perform too if you learn a few things. The full block counteracts a lot of things. Heavy also softens into a full block as well. She also has crushing counters to be defensive, and the forward light is enhanced and is a great roll catcher. The pin itself is going to be a clutch because you can target swap that and make it so that the enemy won't be expecting it because it is 500 MS and you have good enough recovery so you can't guard breaker. So that chain bash is really helpful. She does have a deflect that you can go for a bleed damage, or you can just go for guard break for 24 damage, or go for a wall splat to set up more damage with your teammate, or just go for a ledge. So there's a lot of utility and versatility with this character. I'd say she excels in anti-ganking and stalling, so she's overall a solid character. Her zone also has a huge hitbox to clear minion lane, but the feats that I would be running for her is possibly Deadly and Bounty Hunter. I'd probably run Deadly because you can kind of do a lot of damage with your heavy attacks. Bloodlust is great, but I would probably run Juggernaut so you can be more tankier. Javelin all the way, and then of course Fire Flask. The Highlander is a little bit trickier as well. I think this character can be at the fullest potential, can be a very strong character, and I'd probably put him up in A tier, but I'm gonna put him in B tier because a lot of people, you have to put the muscle and the amount of time and effort into this character, otherwise he's gonna be trash tier. I know a lot of people complain about the light spam and the hyper armor, finisher heavies in general, but that's mainly kind of like a skill issue, and especially when it comes to like old gen players. Like, get it, old gen players, you guys aren't going to be able to handle light spam in general. So this character is obviously probably very strong, but in PC and new gen, Highlander and Dominion is a good character, but you need to put a lot of effort into him. And this tier list for the characters that have the most amount of value without having to use your brain, okay? Highlander requires a lot of patience, reads, and a lot of good reactions. And especially good teammates. You don't have a good teammate, you're not going to be able to clutch your fight because everyone can just dodge roll away from his mix-ups. His unblockable heavies and offensive stance have pretty good hitboxes. His gank setups are pretty good, but you need a good team to do that with. His caber can grab someone so you can go for a pin, but you have to time that correctly with the other person. Coordinated teams, it's really good, but in uncoordinated, good luck. He doesn't really have a roll catcher, although if you do make a huge read on some dodge rolls, you can use your Celtic Curse and you will get 2 heavies on them, which is pretty nice, especially if they are unlocked. His offensive stance doesn't have any guard whatsoever, but he does have access to 400 MS unreactable light attacks, and he can wave dash in and out and weave through battle and dodge a lot of certain things with his dodge cancel recovery. So that's pretty helpful, but you have to master that. His kick to caber is practically useless in 1v1s and in team fights, especially the heavy unblockable into kick. Most people can just dodge roll away from that, so if you didn't know, you just dodge roll. His mix-up is over, especially when he has revenge. So he doesn't really excel in stalling or anti-ganking at all. He's just more of like a support unit that really helps your teammate only if you guys are coordinated enough. Feats that I would be running is fast recovery, so you get more stamina. You can also use rush to get to points faster, but I prefer to be more aggressive, so I want more stamina. You want inspire or winner's advantage to get way more damage, so you don't have to pop inspire every single time. Longbow to finish off people really quickly, and of course Spear Storm or Fire Flask. Shaman is next up on the chopping block, and I'm gonna put her around in B tier as well. Now she excels greatly in duels, but in team fights, you're just gonna get knocked around 24/7. Whereas Shaman, she has to excel in ganking only. Her external pressure it's okay. She does have a forward bash, but it's very slow and uses a lot of stamina. And the hitboxes for finisher heavies and line attacks, they're not really that good. Ganks are really hard to perform in matchmaking because a lot of people will be interrupting your bite. It's basically the Shaman lifestyle, no full blocks. Forward bash is pretty nice, no hyper armor. Dodge cancel recoveries only on her chain heavy attack or chain or finisher heavy attack, and you kind of cancel that to save a little bit of stamina, which is pretty cool. But the dodge attack has no hitboxes. It's a good dodge attack. You can delay it a lot, but it doesn't really help when it comes to like target swapping and dodge attacking away from a certain mix-up, because that's what the best dodge attacks can do right now. The roll catcher is insane though. The right one, which is her right heavy attack, can track people for days, but I'd say the anti-ganking is non-existent. The bleed is great. The forearm has bleeds. If you manage to get someone in 1v1 situations, that's the best opportunity for you, but if you're not in the 1v1s, you're gonna kind of suffer. And of course, her zone attack is a 2-hit chain zone attack, so if you didn't know, if you block the first zone, you can parry the second hit of the first part of the zone, okay? So just do that. I would probably run stealth, bear trap, hand axe, so you can get more bleeds on 1v1 situations. You can also just run fury and fire flask. And at the end of the day, if you have decent reactions and good reads with Shaman, you know, in 1v1s, you should be able to solo carry your own in, you know, a specific base. But, you know, if you don't get any help from your teammates, I think you might be screwed, because her team fights are really bad. But she's very scary in 1v1, so don't underestimate her. Lastly, for Jormungandr. Now, Jormungandr, he did get quite a few changes, but that was a couple patches ago, and I think he's still a relatively strong character, so I'm going to put him in A tier. He does have a lot of good utility with his pins. His pin will deal a lot of damage. Jormungandr has pretty good hitboxes for his light attacks, his chain zone attack, even his neutral zone, and his unblockable finisher, so don't underestimate him, especially in team fights, because he's not afraid to take some trades. He does have really good chain pressure as well with his chain bash, which is feightable, hyper armor on his neutral heavies, and his chain zone. No dodge cancel recoveries, but he does have a forward bash which goes into his chain mix-up. The enhanced lights also help him out tremendously to get into his mix-up, with his unblockable heavies also being able to displace you and wall splat you. Very powerful, and he gets a guard break on you. He can either go for the knee into a light attack for 22 damage total, or go into a heavy attack which displaces you into a wall splat. So if he gets a wall splat, you can go for a top heavy, but these displacements are your clutch potential, and you will deal a lot of damage, and you will also ledge people if you want to. His roll catcher is his forward heavy, and I think it's solid overall. He's a pretty good staller and a pretty good anti-ganker, if I say so myself. A feats that I would probably be running is Jotum's Salve and Hamar's Favor. Zealot's Boat is your always go-to in Twilight of the Gods, is a team winning fight, but be careful because you can get bashed out of that. And wall splat you, very powerful, and he gets a guard break on you. He can either go for the knee into a light attack for 22 damage total, or go into a heavy attack which displaces you into a wall splat. So if he gets a wall splat, you can go for a top heavy, but these displacements are your clutch potential, and you will deal a lot of damage, and you will also ledge people if you want to. His roll catcher is his forward heavy, and I think it's solid overall. He's a pretty good staller and a pretty good anti-ganker, if I say so myself. A feats that I would probably be running is Jotum's Salve and Hamar's Favor. Zealot's Boat is your always go-to in Twilight of the Gods, is a team winning fight, but be careful because you can get bashed out of that. Next up we have Kensei. Now Kensei overall, I'm gonna put him in B tier. Like, there's nothing really negative I have to say about Kensei, nor, you know, overpowered about the character itself. So quickly going over, you know, good light attacks, 3-chain light attacks, 3-chain heavy attacks, good hitboxes on all those, hyper armor on his finisher ones, and hyper armor after a dodge attack, which is really good. The dodge attack and follow-up hyper armor light attack or heavy attack, and a really good unblockable heavy finisher as well. Soft feint with the top heavy into a bash soft feint, which is really nice, pretty much unreactable, good offensive mix-ups in general, and can soft feint. Kensei's a soft feint monster, and I wish we got more soft feint characters in general. But overall, you know, I feel like Kensei is just a really good team fighter. His stalling capabilities pretty decent. I think a lot of characters just kind of outclass him when it comes to, you know, pins, dodge cancel recoveries, and undodgeables. Personally, I would be running fast recovery or body count if you want to stay in the mid lane more, chilling stare or inspire for more damage, longbow, and unblockable or stalwart banner. Both of these are very good. Shugoki, on the other hand, I would say he's a fairly easy character to pick up too, but I'm gonna put him in the B tiers. You know, he doesn't really have anything that kind of sets him apart that makes him really overpowered, or, you know, compared to the other tiers. Good hitboxes on all of his heavy attacks, his neutral ones and his finisher ones, which includes hyper armor and everything. Slow but variable timed heavies, and most players can't parry it consistently at least. His ganks are pretty easy to set up too, because you can just use the hug after a hit's done, and it gives you HP back, which is your clutch potential, and deals 20 damage to set up another heavy attack from your teammate. The forward heavy is a pretty good roll catcher, and he does have chain headbutt and a forward dash headbutt that can pretty much be safe when it comes to trading with other people that can do a dodge attack. So you can do a follow-up heavy afterwards to get a nice trade going on. His lights are enhanced, so if you don't parry that, you go into his chain pressure, and of course his zone attack has hyper armor, so it's really good for peeling and going into team fights and starting off your chain pressure. His side dodge bash is pretty good, has solid iframes, but be careful because you might get guard broken after the recoveries. And then of course Demon Ball has a lot of clutch potential on ledging and making it so that your teammate can get a free heavy on them. Like I said, Shugoki's a solid character overall. I think a lot of people will struggle against him if they can't handle variable timed heavies, but I don't think he offers anything more than the higher tiers than what, the middle tiers have. I would personally run Speed Revive or Iron Lungs, Juggernaut to be tankier, Longbow for easy damage, and staggering blows. Orochi is gonna probably be up in the A+ tiers. This guy is still a monster, even with his recent nerf, which they did remove the ability to get a follow-up light attack after the Storm Rush, and of course they did improve the damage just to 20 overall on the Storm Rush, since it is pretty much reactable to people who are paying attention, especially on PC and maybe even new gen. But the only time I really get hit by it is if I try to go for a deflect, but I could just pretty much block that anytime I want to. But Orochi hasn't really been affected that much. It's more of just like an adjustment that should have been nerfed a long time ago. He has great external pressure with his side heavies, and his finisher heavies are fast as heck. They are 700 MS and deal 30 damage, so you gotta respect it. Anytime the Orochi throws a finisher heavy, do not go for the parry, especially in team fights. You will get hit by it, and you can kind of get clipped by it really fast if he's really close to you. And this goes for all characters that have really fast chain attacks, so when they dead angle, gotta be careful on how well you position, specifically for Orochi since his heavies are 700 MS, and they deal 30 damage. And the dodge cancel recoveries with an addition to his undodgeable dodge attack makes him a monster. He just evade all the mix-ups in team fights, and you have to really respect what the character does. You don't have to respect the player, that's for sure, but you have to respect what the character can do. Orochi really hasn't changed too much. He's still incredibly powerful, even if you're just no-braining him, because with Kiai, Bounty Hunter, Kiai specifically, and Kunai, and then adding Longbow, that is just, ridiculously annoying. That's why a lot of people hate Orochi and want him deleted. Fear itself or Nail Bomb, that's all up to you. Still a fantastic character, one of the best characters in the game. Nobushi is another A+ tier character. Now this character is a menace in Dominion. I kind of want to put her S tier too, but I'm going to leave her on an A+ tier. She is really, really solid, close to borderline S tier, because she has so much utility right now. She's so versatile in Dominion, even if you're just playing solo queue. Great hitboxes with the undodgeable heavies, finisher ones, and even with the kick, the ability is just like 566, which is a lot slower than a lot of chain bashes, but has the ability to wall splat, and you can delay it tremendously. You can delay her light attacks and delay her heavy finishers, which make her really scary if you're not really paying attention. The people who can react to it are gonna have an easier time against her, but in team fights, I think that's where she excels the most. In duels, she is okay in matchmaking. She's not that bad. But in team fights, you have to respect everything she does. Big zone attack, no hyper armor, no neutral pressure whatsoever. But if you are bleeding, she does way more damage away at the shark, so that's something you have to respect. And it's her clutch potential, and you just gotta be careful with the hidden stance, because the hidden stance is great for iframes and evading mix-ups, and she can go into a light attack, a heavy attack, or a kick. The dodge cancels are also superior with her when she does her dodge light or Cobra Strike. It's just insane. This character is just the bleed master, and the best thing about this character specifically is when she is fighting a revenged opponent when you're ganking. If you don't take care of her and watch what you're doing, she will just dodge light you and you will die to bleed after you exit revenge. So this is really powerful right now, especially in this meta. No roll catchers and really no anti-gank abilities whatsoever, but her stalling is not too shabby. Feats to be running for her is Speed Revive, Body Count, Arrow Strike, or Smoke Bomb, and then of course we're going to use Longbow and Fire Trap. Shinobi is going to be the next A+ tier character. He's still a menace, a lot of tools in his kit, great hitboxes for his zone attack, and of course easy ganks with his somersault and his sickle rain. Sickle rain is insane still, feeds a bit of revenge, but the point of it is to deal as much damage as possible. Even if they get revenge, they'll be dead within the next couple of seconds because they only have like 10 HP or something like that. So it doesn't really matter. His kick is great too because it does pins, and you can essentially set up some easy ganks even if the opponent is in revenge, and it's actually so depressing. Great forward bash and side dodge bash with the double bash. You can kind of option select the kick into undodgeable mix-ups for a lot of characters, so those characters that have the kick into undodgeable, you have to kind of respect the Shinobi and see what the heck he's gonna do. He's also got the highest guard break damage in the entire game. I think it's 24 plus 4, it's 28 damage for a guard break. So Be sure to not get hit by that, I promise you, you will regret it. He excels specifically in ganking and is not too shabby of a team fighter himself. His character is insane with the undodgeable finisher heavy, the unblockable one, and with a light riposte after a parry, you can go into 50-50 mix-up with the kick or undodgeable, and it's just ridiculous. The deflects are also one of the best deflects in the entire game, and with Bounty Hunter, Stealth, and Kiai, I mean, he just has a lot of good tier 1 feats. Shooting Star is absolutely broken. You can land like 80 damage with it, really insane, and it does 20 damage for tier 2 and really fast cooldown, only 90 seconds. You can run Nuki Kubi, which basically means that you have infinite stamina. It's actually insane. And then, of course, Nail Bomb or Yama Uba, which gives you health after every single move. So Aramusha, I've debated on putting him in the A tiers. Now, this character, he's just solid overall. Like, he's just really, really good defensively, offensively, and is hard to kill. Really hard to kill unless you have like a full block and good crushing counter character, defensive capabilities. It can honestly feel a little bit overwhelming when you're fighting against him, so I'm gonna put him in A+ tier. He's kind of like a really good pub stomper, and with the ability to just keep attacking and deal deadly feints, which are 400 ms unreactable in duels, and deal a ton of damage with his chain heavies, which has great hitboxes. Target swapping those things, it's insane. He's really, really good in that regard. Easy ganks with his Ring the Bell. You can just utilize that to deal damage as fast as possible, and it can kill people before they pop Revenge, which is another perfection about Aramusha. The forward dodge attack is also amazing too, because it has hyper armor. You can go to Ring the Bell as well, and the dodge attack is insane. The animations can be hard to tell if he's going to target you or target the other person, so you can utilize that for option selecting a ton of things. I'm putting him higher now than the previous tier list because a lot of characters, especially the new ones, have really good hitboxes that are unblockable. So the neutral light attacks and zone attacks from Afeera, Ocelotl, and Medjay, those characters can be easily outclassed by Aramusha, simply because he has that blockade. And add that to the fact his full block can be cancelled after every single move, so if you don't have the unblockable or dodge bash, it can be really hard to deal damage to Aramusha. I think he's really hard to kill if you don't have a coordinated gank setup. I think you have to be careful too if there's an Aramusha that is, trying to attack you while you're in revenge. He will melt your health bar with just heavies, because his chain heavies deal 30 damage each. Best feats to be running would be Deadly, Juggernaut, Second Wind, or you can run Sharpened Blade or Flaming Arrow. All these are really solid. Fear itself is probably more recommended than Stalwart Banner, but that's all up to you on your playstyle. Hitokiri, I'm gonna put her around in B tier. Overall, the character is pretty good. She is sort of like a pub stomper like Aramusha, but I don't think she offers as much versatility compared to Aramusha. She does have the variable timed heavies with really good hitboxes overall. But you know what, now I just talked myself out of it. I'm going to put her up in the A tiers because a lot of people can't deal with Hitokiri consistently, especially in matchmaking. So this character is going to be your pub stomper, just like Aramusha. So with the variable timed heavies that have higher armor, and they also buffed her recently with her zone attack being less stamina and making her chain heavies much faster and the heavy startup, and also making it so that the hyper armor starts up on her neutral heavies now. And it seems like her heavy attack, which are chain heavy attacks, are much faster too. And keep in mind, she still has that chain kick mix-up that can land basically 22 damage every single time. So if you can't react to the kick mix-up itself, then you're gonna have a tough time against her. The dodge attack is pretty solid too, and it's a good chain starter to go into your mix-ups and just throw heavies for days. And I think the scariest thing about the Hitokiri is that charging up those unblockable heavy finishers that deal 30 damage, 34 damage actually, is probably the scariest thing, and you have to kind of respect that. Feats that I would run is Deliverance, Tainted Gift, or Righteous Deflection. Righteous Deflection for me because I want to feel a little bit more tankier. Personally, I would run Spirit Trail because that's basically Bastion off the points. 50% damage reduction is really nice. And then of course Zenban Zakura, which is basically a free kill as long as you have a teammate that can guard break for you. Really easy. Otherwise, just run Fear itself. Kyoshin is the last character, and I'm gonna put him up in S tiers because this character is really easy to use. Basically, full block simulator, okay? You can't tell me how annoying it is to actually have a full block character, especially Kyoshin, just ganking you, just sitting there menacingly. His externals are great. Zone is great for hitboxes. Chain bash pressure, undodgeable pressure, easy ganks to utilize. If you have a good teammate that can just guard break for you, you can get off your Kyoshin gank, and you can land 2 free heavies on that. Forward dodge kick is a solid opener, and with the forward dodge heavy attack is a fantastic roll catcher. You can cancel all of his moves with the full block, so he can be very safe in regard when it comes to team fights, anti-ganking, and stalling, so be careful about that. It can also be tricky just guard breaking him because you can use his 500 ms light attack or his 500 ms zone attack. And you can continue with a crushing counter finisher heavy if he makes a good read. So he's pretty tricky to deal with, so you kind of have to respect his moveset because he does have those crushing counter light attacks that will make him pretty defensive. He's basically Black Prior, but in a different sense when it comes to defensive plays. The feats to be running will probably just be all the default feats. Now you could run Arrow Strike if you're in an open map, but the default feats are probably the best ones you should be using. Alright, we're almost done here, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with me. Tiandi, I'm gonna put him up in S tier. This guy has tons of offense and chain pressure, especially for the matchmaking lobbies. You will absolutely be stomping with him because he has a lot of unreactable mix-ups. His hitboxes are not too shabby. His zone attack is probably his best hitbox attack. Great ganks with his chain kick that can be feintable. Good for ganks. They did lower his damage. It used to be 24 to 20, but I don't really think that matters. It's just the utility of the move itself is still great, and you confirm that really easily with just a light attack. And they did nerf a bunch of his damage values, especially his finisher light attacks, which are 400 MS. They're about 10, but basically every 400 MS light attack is about 9 or 10 damage. Okay, so that's on par and standardized, so it makes sense for the character since he has tons of chain pressure already. Also, what makes him pretty powerful if he misses a palm strike is that the finisher light is 400 MS and it comes from all sides, so you have to kind of make a read on that part. He has really good stalling capabilities with his dragon dodge, and he can crush and counter with his undodgeable light attacks, which are 500 MS. I mean, honestly, there's not much to say about this character. What he does works really well, and he can catch those people who have dodge cancel recoveries with the forward dodge lights. I've seen some comments that say he's a lot weaker due to his damage being lowered, but he's still kept all of his mix-ups, and his chain link timings are still pretty fast. Tireless is what I would personally use. Some people have used Rally Call before, but you have to stay in the fight with really low HP, so that's kind of up to you. Doom Banner is always the way to go. Vital Leech and Indomitable is top tier. JJ, of course, is still going to be S tier. They've done nothing with the character, so overall, he's just going to be the same type of character. Great external pressure with his unblockable heavies, hyper armor on his neutral side heavies as well that deal a lot of damage. Really good ganks with the shin kick because that also does pin. Sifu stance that regenerates stamina and has iframe, so he can be a menace, especially in team fights when you're repositioning around with him. You can just kind of dodge away from everybody and soft feint that into a light attack, which is really fast. The roll catcher is top tier too, but you know, I think everyone already knows he's a really strong pick, and if you want more information on that, just check out the recent tier list. I don't want to go over and repeat every single thing about the character, and he's probably not going to go away on the top tiers for a while. A lot of clutch potential with this character, and he's great for stalling and anti-ganking. Deadly is great with it, Inspire you should be using, and Soothing Mist is fantastic as well, but if you don't have a really good team, you don't trust your team, just go with Second Wind, or just be a tank and use Tough as Nails. Fire Flask is always the way to go, but you can also run Phalanx to counter some other tier 4 feats. Nuxia, this character is a bit rough, I'd say. I don't really want to put her any higher than maybe C tier. She is a strong character in duels, but you know, this is team fights, and I think she still suffers tremendously against hyper armor. Maybe if you're like one of the best players out there, you can make her work with a good team, but you definitely cannot solo carry this character, I can guarantee you. Nuxia still has the same issues as characters like Peacekeeper and Warden. They don't have dodge cancel recoveries. Their gank's a little bit hard to perform. No full blocks, no hyper armors. She does have pretty good dueling potential with 400 MS unreactable light attacks within her chains, 3 of them, mind you, which deal about, I think, 10 damage or so. 9 to 10 damage, a solid roll catcher, and the trap mix-up did get improved slightly, but in team fights, I don't think the traps are going to work that much. The best thing you could possibly do is heavy feint into guard break. I would avoid using her in team fights as much as possible, and try to stay on a point and duel people. Deadly Duet is your best bet, and I think that's why you should take duels, because you deal 20% more damage, and it will actually destroy your opponents with the displacement on the wall splat and the heavy finishers. A lot of people won't expect it because most people don't play Nuxia, so they don't know how to fight against her. Hell traps are still one of your best feats. Slip through is probably your best bet. I don't think you should be using anything else. You could use takedown and get some heavy finisher stuff that can unbalance them, but that's up to you. I don't really see anybody use that. Infection is probably the last one you should be running. Shaolin is the next S tier character, and well, sometimes you just don't know what hit you, and what really hit you was Shaolin's dodge attack, because it's the best dodge attack in the entire game. The hitbox is ginormous, and of course, he can go into a chain light that is, it can be dead zoned where you can't actually block it, or it feels really, really hard to block it. So that's one of his strengths, and you can kind of do that with a lot of other characters like Kensei with chain light attacks, and it's really helpful, and people can't block it. So it's basically free damage, but of course, he goes into his cheese stance with his 50-50 mix-up on his kick and is undodgeable, incredible for ganking, incredible for stalling, and you know, just a strong character. Okay, Shaolin is just a character that requires you to make reads against him unless you can dodge that 500 ms kick and that top light, which is 500 ms, and it is enhanced, so if you don't dodge those, if you don't parry those, you will enter his chain mix-up. He also does have chain 400 ms light attacks if he does get into a heavy, so be careful about that. Other than that, he's incredibly agile with his chi stance. He can dodge away from you, he can deflect a bunch of stuff. He has crushing counters within his deflects. I mean, not deflects, but his chi stance, so you have to respect everything he does. Key trap is really useful, but some maps I feel like it's just not worth using, so just use stealth. Blink is just ridiculously good, and it's very hard to dodge. Invigorate, and of course, Blessed Projection. Zhanhu, I think he's still going to be S tier. This character has a lot of utility and can absolutely stop the matchmaking lobbies, the zone attack being undodgeable, really insane. It's only 600 ms, but the unblockable light attacks can really be helpful when you surprise your opponent with it. I don't like to use it too much because a lot of times I get parried using it because it's only 600 ms, and good PC players can parry that, I'd say like half the time. It's not really good when it comes to risk versus reward. You eat a light parry, you get like 18 damage. It's not that worth in my opinion. Dodge cancel recoveries, which are insane. You can get a deflect on that for free damage. The unblockable heavies have so much range, and he's just really good at ganking overall. His dodge bash palm strike is really helpful for guaranteeing some OS pressure, and he can feel very hard to touch by repositioning with his zone attack and the dodge cancel recoveries. He does have a forward light that is enhanced, so if you don't parry that, you enter his chain mix-up, which is the unblockable, and he does have frame advantage on his bash, so be careful about that. He's a great character to complement your team, and I would always fear a Zhanhu, especially a good one, in team fights. That's why full block characters are so prevalent in this meta right now, so he kind of gets negated by that, but if you play smart, you can kind of just bait them out. And that is it for the Wulin, and we're moseying on over to the Outlanders. The next character we have is Pirate. I'm gonna put Pirate up in A tier. She did get buffed recently. They made it so that she is frame neutral with her pistol blast now, so you can use that without being frame disadvantaged, so it's really helpful and go into your unblockable heavy mix-up, and they improved the damage on her chain heavy attack with the hyper armor. So the tracking on that is insane. They sped up her dodge attack, or the recoveries of her pistol blast is faster, so she can use that and dodge cancel away from things. So really good staller, and a chain bash after the dodge attack is really helpful. It's 500 ms. A lot of people won't be able to dodge out of that, and you can essentially dodge away from that again with an undodgeable light attack. Pretty decent at ganking too, and really scary with an unblockable heavy finisher because you can pin with it and you will be able to wall splat. We all know how Pirate is. The forward heavy unblockable spam with hyper armor is sped up to I believe 700 ms, so you know, overall the character is still going to be relatively the same. It's just going to be that she's more consistent and less at a disadvantage when using pistol blast, although pistol blast is a pretty good hit stun. Most people won't be able to react to unblockable heavy finishers anyway, so the character has already been pretty decent in matchmaking, but now she's a little bit better against the higher tier players. Armor piercing slug is what you want to be running, decreases defense. The tier 2s are kind of meh. Bloodlust is good, but you know, you have to get a kill first. Throwing comeback is okay, you get a little bit of HP, which can be helpful after getting revenge. But Pocket Bomb is just, you know, the hitbox is not that good for Pocket Bomb, but you can go into a chain mix-up afterwards. It's just the nice thing about Pirate is that she can use her feats within her attacks or a chain pressure. So that's what makes her really powerful, especially when she gets trick shot. You don't really expect her to use her gun blast like that. And of course, Gunpowder Surprise is her team-winning feat. Medjay is the next character up in here, and he's still S tier. Now, he did get a few nerfs, but it's not really that noticeable in my honest opinion. So they did nerf his damage values all around. As you can see here, his chain side heavies, they are now 28, and everything is about 30 now, his finishers. So it makes him a little bit more standardized when it comes to damage, and they also said they adjusted his hitboxes, but to be fair, it's really not that noticeable. I think the only people that really notices it are the people who actually played Medjay. His light attacks, especially his chain finisher light attacks, they have been reduced on hitboxes, but they're still really good. And of course, his zone and his heavy attacks in general have been reduced, but it's still really insane and will clip people when they aren't paying attention. So you have to respect everything he does. He's the best mid clearer in the game and one of the best team fighters in the entire game. I think you can no-brain this character and absolutely just stomp lobbies and get your KD ratio up super high. His staff form has the grab that can 100 to 0 people, and it's just not that fun, especially if you fight a good good team that can set that up really easily. So if you're in that setup or against a sweaty team, you have to play really safe with your team. The axe form is okay. It's not like the best thing. The hitboxes need adjustments on his heavy finisher on blockables, but he does have a 500 MS bash, which is okay. Overall, it kind of pales in comparison when it comes to his staff form, especially for team fights. You want to be using this guy in team fights as much as possible and ganking. Sunshine Strength, Sushiba Run, Moonlight Drain is your best bet. Scarab Relief is pretty good, but the only bad thing about it is that you have to swap to your axe form if you just want to heal yourself, if you're trying to like anti-gank or something like that. I mean, second wind is probably better if you like to fight by yourself in solo queue, but if you fight with your team most of the time, I feel like Scarab Relief is probably the best bet because you can heal your teammates for like 15 health. It's not too bad. Because in axe mode, you only get 25, second wind you get 30. 5 points does make a difference. And then, of course, Astral Manifestation, you can get this like 2 or 3 times in a match if you get High Renown, and of course, if you have Rapid Refresh. Afeera is going to be S tier here. She's probably like the best character in my honest opinion, one of the most annoying characters to deal with, specifically because she's so safe and has so many utility and tools to deal with any situation whatsoever. Crushing counters on all of her light attacks. She can enter a Chain Bash with a 50-50 mix-up, the 500 MS kick, into an undodgeable, her left side heavy also wall splats, and after every freaking heavy parry, she can do a bash and use her left side heavy that wall splats for 16 and go for a top heavy for freaking 27 damage, entering, I think it's about 45 damage for a heavy parry. Pretty ridiculous, right? And Lawbringer used to have those damage values, but not anymore, so let's hope that Afeera gets adjusted in the future because this is very strong for heavy parry punish. That's why she's one of the top tier characters right now. Besides that, she still has a bunch of tools with her in kit. She can somersault after every attack, which is basically like a dodge cancel recovery into a kick that can be utilized for like ganking with a lot of other characters and confirm heavy attacks. And keep in mind, she can target swap her confirm bash attack into a different direction. It can be unblockable, it can be the undodgeable one, or it can be the wall splat one. So it's pretty cool, really cool tech for people to utilize, but it can be parryable, so keep an eye out for that. And of course, she does have that deflect, which bashes them and can use a wall splat side heavy, or just guarantee the unblockable or undodgeable heavy attack. The neutral bash is just unreactable. It's super hard to fight against. You have to make a good read against it, interrupt her, dodge out of the way. I personally always dodge, okay, because it's just, I feel like it's better. It's just better. I don't know. It's just really hard to deal with most of the time. The best feats to run would be Gravity's Pull, which is her grab, Fortune's Favor, and then Speeding Comet, which enters, you know, basically a seg scene. So have fun with that, and you're gonna get ganked really easily. You get this so fast. It's 90-second cooldown. It needs to be nerfed to like 300 seconds or like 150 or something like that. It's way too powerful. Also, this one right here, Gravity's Pull, is incredible as well. It needs to be, the damage needs to be reduced to like 10 or something, and cooldown needs to be increased for having such a pin at a tier 1. It doesn't make any sense at all. Very powerful tool. Orbiting Shield is also really good. Decrease defense for all the people around, but be careful because you can hit your teammates and lower the defense as well. The last character is Ocelotl. I'm gonna put up an A tier. This character is still really good, especially in matchmaking. A lot of people won't be able to react to his mix-ups, specifically because he has that chain 400 MS light attack. Even I have a hard time reacting to this. So the chain bash is feightable, and he gets a pin that is 500 MS that zaps their heads off for 22 damage, and it's good for allowing gank setup. So this character, he did get nerfed a couple weeks after launch where his bash wasn't a pin anymore, so that kind of made him weak in that regard. So I think they still need to buff him when it comes to the bash into light and make that like 12 damage, because right now I think it's only 10 damage. So obviously that needs to be adjusted. He gets hyper armor on his zone attack, and it's feightable too, so it's pretty cool. But his chain pressure is still pretty solid. I mean, a feightable bash within your chains is always a good thing. His dodge attack is really good for target swapping, quite hard to react to, and his hitboxes for his light attacks are fairly large. This goes the same for Afeera, Ocelotl. These characters, once they put the enemy in between the other enemy and target swap to the one furthest away from them, you will be able to hit the other person and be safe in that regard. Usually Ocelotl, Medjay, those characters try to reposition with the dodge attack or slowly walk to the side and make it so that the person in the middle will get hit, so watch out and try to parry the follow-up light attack if you see that happening. Understance is still really good at pins. It gets you into your unblockable heavy mix-up, and I think it also gets you into your bash mix-up as well. There's just a lot of utility with it, and you can just fly super far away. Like, the range on it is insane. Feats to be running for this character would be Huntsman's Spirit. If you don't really want to, you know, be AFK and run to the point all the time, you can run Tireless, but I feel like Huntsman's Spirit is really good because it messes with people's rotations. That's if you have like a decent team. If you have a terrible team, this is going to be a terrible feat to run. Tireless is probably going to be your best bet. Benchmark is nice too, but Bear Trap is probably better. Quetzalcoatl's, I actually butchered that. Quetzalcoatl's Blessing is probably going to be your best bet too, but I run second wind so that I can heal after using my tier 1, so it's really helpful. And of course Trapper's Reach is going to be your best bet because it deals a lot of damage and it can ledge people there because people can't counter guard break. Hilarious. And that's about it for the tier list. Thank you so much for watching, you BEA beautiful souls. Please be sure to let me know your thoughts down below, and as always, this is just my opinion. We all have different experiences and certain biases as well, but I feel like I did a decent job. And how do you guys like the format of it? Should I just keep going with faction-based tier lists like so? Please let me know down below. I think it feels a lot better. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out my Twitch channel and my second channel as well. Hope you guys been enjoying the Dark Tide content as well. More of that good stuff coming very soon. Appreciate all the support as always, you BEA beautiful souls. Bye bye. See you later.